Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. I can still hear the sound of the front door closing behind her. It was the softest sound, almost imperceptible. But in that moment, it might as well have been a gunshot. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum, as if the air had been sucked out of the room and I was left suffocating in my own confusion. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. I don't think I ever imagined it would end like this, or maybe I didn't want to imagine it. Marissa had promised me she'd change, that she would stop disappearing, stop pulling away, stop letting distance creep into everything we once had. But in the end, that promise didn't mean a thing. What happened next, I never expected. It started with a text message. Just one line, simple enough that I could have brushed it off. But I didn't. I couldn't. I couldn't look away from the words. I think it's time we end things. I'm not happy anymore. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what was happening. It wasn't like her to just throw words like that at me. We'd had our issues, sure, but we'd always talked through them, worked things out. I'd convinced myself that whatever had been brewing in our marriage could be fixed. But this was different. I tried calling her. Nothing. She wouldn't pick up. I left a voicemail, then another, then a few more. But it was clear, she had already made up her mind. I was the one left in the dark, the one scrambling to find out what had really happened, to understand how I had gotten to this point. It wasn't until the next day that I found out. I wasn't supposed to be home. I had planned to spend the day with some old friends. But something didn't sit right with me. I knew something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to be there. So, I changed my plans and came home earlier than expected. When I walked into our bedroom, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. The scent of perfume in the air. It wasn't hers. It was too sweet, too foreign, too obvious. I froze. My first instinct was to leave, to walk out before I saw anything more. But curiosity got the best of me. I started looking around, picking through the drawers, rifling through the things that should have been private, but I needed answers. And that's when I found it. The letter. It wasn't addressed to me, but to someone else. I didn't need to read it all to know what it was. The handwriting was familiar. Marissa had written this letter, and the words made my stomach twist. I've been seeing someone else. He makes me feel alive again, something I haven't felt in a long time. I'm sorry for everything, but I can't keep pretending. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to absorb what I had just read. This couldn't be real. I had to be dreaming, right? This wasn't my life. But it was. It was all happening in front of me, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. It had been months, maybe even years, that I had been trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. Marissa had been distant for so long, and I had ignored all the signs. I had convinced myself that things would get better, that the magic would return. But the truth had been right in front of me, staring me in the face, and I had refused to see it. In the days that followed, the silence between us grew. She came and went as if I wasn't even there. There were no more conversations about our future, no more promises of a second chance, no more I love yous. She was just gone. I knew she was seeing him, the man she had written about in the letter. I didn't know his name, but I didn't need to. The thought of her with someone else was all-consuming. It burned like acid in my chest, gnawing at me every second of every day. But what cut the deepest was the fact that she didn't even care enough to talk to me about it. She didn't want to explain, to apologize, to try and make things right. She didn't owe me an explanation, but I needed one. I needed to know what went wrong. I needed to know why I wasn't enough. I could feel myself starting to spiral. The longer I waited for her to make the first move, the more I began to lose myself. I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone bitter, angry, confused. But despite everything, I still loved her. She promised she'd change, but the divorce papers were already signed, sealed, and delivered. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the end. The days after Marissa left were the hardest of my life. I couldn't even begin to understand what had happened, what had gone wrong. One day, everything was fine. At least, I thought it was. And the next, she was gone, leaving nothing but a trail of unanswered questions and a hole in my chest that I couldn't seem to fill. For the first few days, I kept telling myself that maybe she just needed space. I could give her space. I could give her time to figure things out. But as the silence stretched on, I started to feel something more insidious growing inside me. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was dread. The fear that I was being left behind, that maybe I wasn't enough, started to creep into every thought I had. I tried to stay busy. I went to work, did the usual things. But when I came home, the house felt different, empty. It was like walking into a place that used to have life, but had since been drained of all its warmth. The sound of her laughter, the way she'd always hum in the kitchen while making dinner, it was all gone. The silence felt like a physical weight. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text, a call, some kind of sign that she would reach out, that maybe we could work things out. But nothing came. Just the buzzing of notifications that had nothing to do with her. Then came the first message, an email from her. I opened it with shaky hands, hoping for something, anything. But it wasn't a long, heartfelt message like I'd hoped. It was a simple sentence. I need time, don't contact me. It stung, more than anything else. The finality of it. The coldness. There was no mention of the affair, no explanation. It felt like she had closed a door without a second thought, without even a glance back. I had to accept it, right? But that was the hardest part. Accepting that the person I loved, who had promised me so many things, who had promised us, was gone, without even a real explanation. I could feel my anger starting to bubble beneath the surface. Anger that she didn't give me the courtesy of closure. Anger that I had let myself become so blind to everything around me. But most of all, I was angry at myself. How had I let this happen? How had I missed all the signs? How had I been so naive? But then, just when I thought I couldn't take any more silence, a knock on the door shattered everything. I was still reeling from the email when it happened. I had just sat down on the couch, staring blankly at the walls, trying to figure out how I had let my life spiral so quickly. The house felt so hollow now. Every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind outside made it seem like it was mocking me. And in that moment, I thought maybe the silence would be the end of me, until the knock on the door. I froze. It was late, too late for anyone to be stopping by. The knock came again, this time louder, more insistent. I stood up, my heart racing. It couldn't be her. She was the last person I expected to show up at my doorstep after everything that had happened. My hands were shaking as I reached for the door handle, but something inside me, something desperate, needed to know who was on the other side. When I opened the door, I didn't see Marissa. Instead, there was a man standing there, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't recognize him at first, but the moment I saw him, a strange feeling washed over me, a gut instinct that something wasn't right. "I'm looking for Marissa," he said, his voice calm, but with an underlying edge. "Is she here?" I felt the world tilt. This wasn't just a coincidence. This man knew her, and if he was looking for her, it could only mean one thing. She had moved on. She had replaced me, just like that. I tried to control my breathing, trying to suppress the wave of panic rising in my chest. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My name's Aaron. I'm seeing Marissa." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to deny it, wanted to scream that he was lying, that she was still my wife, that he had no place here. But the truth had already come crashing down on me. I didn't need him to tell me. I could see it in his eyes, the same look I had seen in Marissa's when she had walked out the door. He seemed to sense my shock. "Look, I didn't want to be the one to come here, but she told me I should. She wanted me to get her things. She said you wouldn't be here for long." My legs nearly gave out beneath me. She had told him to come here? To take her things? The finality of it, the absolute certainty in her actions, hit me harder than anything else. I had thought she'd left to sort out her feelings, maybe to come to some conclusion. But no, she had already made her choice. She had already moved on. I stared at Aaron, trying to find the words, trying to make sense of the mess that had become my life. "How long?" I asked, barely able to speak. "How long has this been going on?" Aaron looked at me for a moment, as if deciding whether to answer. "It's been a few months. We've been seeing each other since, well, since before she left you." My blood ran cold. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. She had been with him while we were still married, while we were still supposed to be working on things. I thought I was fighting for us, trying to hold on to something that was already gone. "Why are you here?" I managed to ask, my voice cracking. "Why are you telling me this?" He shrugged. "She told me you deserve to know. She thought it'd be easier this way." Easier. The word stung. But even more than that, I could feel a deep sense of anger bubbling up inside me. I had been blind. I had been the fool. And now, in the face of everything, I was being told I deserved to know. "She's gone, man," he added, his tone surprisingly sympathetic. She's made her choice. I know it's tough, but you need to face it. She's not coming back. The reality of it all hit me harder than anything else had before. Marissa, the woman I thought I could trust with everything, had already moved on. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. And worse, she had never truly been honest with me. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a suffocating fog. The silence between us was thick with understanding. He was the new reality, and I was the old one, clinging to something that was no longer mine. Before I could say anything else, he turned and started walking back down the stairs to his car. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as he left, and I stood there, staring at the door he had just walked out of, trying to make sense of everything. But nothing made sense. My life, the life I thought I had with Marissa, was gone. And as much as I hated to admit it, I knew the divorce papers had already been signed, sealed, and delivered. The next few days were a blur. Aaron's visit, the conversation we'd had, it all swirled in my mind like a storm I couldn't outrun. Marissa had moved on, but I was still stuck in the wreckage of what had been. I had tried so hard to keep us together, to fix something that now seemed unfixable. But in that moment, I realized something that cut deeper than anything else. She didn't even care enough to tell me herself. She had sent him, a man I didn't know, to pick up the pieces of her life, to walk away from me without a second glance. It wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage. It was a betrayal of everything I had ever thought about us. I spent the night sitting in the living room, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage. I remembered our first date, our wedding day, the way we would talk for hours after long days of work. It all felt like a lie now, as though I had been living in a version of reality she had carefully crafted, and I had been too blind to see through it. The next morning, I tried calling her. Again, I hadn't stopped trying. But just like the countless calls before, there was no answer. No explanation. Nothing. It wasn't until later that afternoon that I got another email. My heart sank when I saw her name pop up on my screen. For a moment, I debated whether I should open it. But curiosity won out. I can't do this right now. I know it's hard, but I need you to move on. I've made my decision. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I've made my decision. There was no going back. She had made up her mind long before Aaron had knocked on my door. I was the one who had been left behind, clinging to hope while she had already moved on. But there was more. The email contained a piece of information I hadn't expected. She attached a copy of the divorce papers. I had been so focused on the aftermath of her leaving that I didn't even think about the legal side of things. But there it was, black and white, the official end of everything we had built together. The papers had been signed, sealed, and sent without me even knowing. She wasn't going to come back. There was no reconciliation, no last-minute changes of heart. What I had thought were promises were nothing more than empty words. I sat there, staring at the screen, numb. The weight of it all was suffocating. My life, the future I had envisioned with her, was crumbling away, piece by piece. And I had no idea how to pick up the pieces and move on. But as I sat there, the realization hit me. This was the final chapter. There was no more fighting, no more hoping for a change. She had made her choice, and I was left standing in the ruins of what once was. It wasn't supposed to end like this. I had convinced myself that we'd work through it. I kept thinking that maybe, just maybe, things would go back to the way they were, before the distance, before the lies. But after reading that email, after seeing the divorce papers in front of me, I realized how foolish I had been. The house felt even emptier now. There were moments when I'd expect to hear her voice calling from the kitchen or see her sitting at the dining table, lost in thought. But it was just silence. Cold, hollow silence. The life I had known was gone. I hadn't heard from Marissa in days after the email. I had sent a few more messages, trying to reach her, but she never responded. I didn't know if she had blocked me or if she simply didn't care enough to check her phone. Each unanswered call, each unread text felt like another piece of myself slipping away. Then, one evening, I saw her name pop up on my phone. My heart raced, and for a moment, I froze. I didn't know whether to pick up or ignore it. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to demand answers, to confront her for everything she had done. But another part of me, deep down, wanted to hear her voice, to believe that there was still a chance for us. I answered. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could hear the tremor in it. "Hey," Marissa's voice came through the line. It was quiet, almost tentative. I need to talk to you. I clenched my fists, my whole body tense. The last time we'd spoken, she had told me to move on, to let go. Now, here she was, calling me, asking to talk. I wasn't sure what to feel: anger, confusion, or maybe even a desperate hope that she had come to her senses. "I don't know what you want me to say, Marissa," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You've made it clear that you're done. You've made your choice, and I'm just the guy left cleaning up the mess." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't speak. I wanted her to explain herself, to tell me why, to tell me what I did wrong, but all I heard was the silence stretching out between us. Finally, she spoke. "I know this is hard. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep pretending. I've been unhappy for a long time, and I couldn't live with myself anymore." Her words stung more than anything she could have said. "Unhappy for a long time?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. "So you just checked out? You couldn't even tell me?" "I tried to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But every time I tried, you didn't hear me. You were too focused on fixing things that were already broken." I could feel the anger rising again, bubbling to the surface. She had been telling me for months that she wanted to work things out, that we could fix it. And now, she was telling me it was all in my head, that I had missed the signs. "You think I didn't hear you?" I said, my voice trembling. "I was trying. I was fighting for us. And you were already gone, weren't you? You were already with him." There was another long pause before she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't keep living a lie. Aaron is different. He makes me feel things I haven't felt in years. I thought I was doing the right thing for both of us." It felt like a punch to the gut. She had left me for him, and now she was telling me that he was the reason. She had replaced me without a second thought. The betrayal felt like a physical ache in my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "So that's it then? You're just done with everything we had. You've moved on, and I'm supposed to just accept that?" "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I really am. I never wanted it to end this way. But I don't think I can go back to you. I don't think I can go back to us." The finality in her words hit me harder than anything else. There would be no more second chances, no more "I love yous." She was gone. For good. I felt a strange emptiness wash over me. It wasn't relief, like I thought I might feel. It was the recognition that the life I had imagined with her, the life I thought we were building, was nothing more than a dream. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. I ended the call, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the phone in my hand. It felt like a door had closed, but at the same time, it felt like I had never truly been on the other side of it. I spent the next few days in a haze. It was like the world had lost its color. Everything around me felt distant and cold. After Marissa's call, I thought I might feel some relief. A sense of finality, maybe. But no. Instead, I was left with a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't shake off. I started to piece together moments from the last few years, things I had missed, the small signs I had ignored, the whispers that I had pushed away. How many times had she looked at me with that distant expression, as though she were a million miles away? How many times had she said everything was fine when I knew deep down that it wasn't? I realized, too late, that I had been living in denial. The man she was seeing, Aaron, he wasn't just some fleeting fling. He was the culmination of months, maybe years, of dissatisfaction and lies. She had already made her choice long before she left. Then came the day I found the picture. I wasn't looking for it, but it was there, hidden in a drawer, tucked between old receipts and bills. It was a photo of Marissa and Aaron, taken at some beach resort. They were holding hands, smiling like they had all the time in the world. Seeing that picture felt like someone had ripped my heart out and thrown it on the floor. I wanted to tear it up, burn it, but something inside me told me I needed to keep it. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the truth I had been unwilling to face. I sat there, staring at the photo, my hands shaking. Marissa had moved on, and I hadn't even seen it coming. I had been so focused on fixing what was broken, on believing that love could solve everything. But it wasn't enough. It never was. The pain was suffocating, but it was also waking me up to a harsh reality. She wasn't the person I thought she was. She wasn't the woman who would fight for us, for me. She was someone else now. I was left with nothing but the shattered remains of a life I thought we would share. There was no going back, no undoing the damage. and there was only one thing left to do. I had to let go. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, unanswered calls, and moments of trying to convince myself that I was better off without her. I told myself over and over that I had to move on, that she was no longer the woman I thought I knew. But the pain kept creeping back, wave after wave. It was as if everything I had built had collapsed, and I was left to sift through the wreckage. The house felt like a tomb, haunted by memories of things I couldn't change. I would walk past the places where we had spent our happiest moments together. The kitchen counter where we used to argue about silly things. The couch where we'd cuddle up and binge-watch shows. The backyard where we made plans for our future. Now, those places felt like ruins, places where I could still feel her presence, but it was a ghost. Nothing was left of the life I thought we had. I couldn't stay there. The memories were suffocating me. But every time I thought about moving, about packing up and leaving, something in me hesitated. I wasn't ready. Not yet. It was like I was still holding on to the idea of her, the version of her that existed before all the lies, before the betrayal. But that person wasn't real anymore. She was a memory, one that had been tainted by everything that had happened. I spent hours going through old photos, old messages, and reminders of our life together. I couldn't help it. I was searching for something, anything, that would give me closure. But all I found was a deeper ache in my chest. The truth was harder to accept than I had imagined. Then came the day I ran into her. I was at the grocery store, minding my own business, trying to get through the mundane task of buying food. It was a Saturday, the store was crowded, and I was just trying to get in and out without thinking too much. But as I rounded the corner, I saw her. Marissa. She was standing there, casually picking out produce, her hair falling just right, her back to me. For a moment, I thought about turning around, walking away, pretending like I didn't see her. But something in me, something I couldn't explain, compelled me to approach her. I took a deep breath and walked up to her, the air between us thick with unspoken words. When she turned around and saw me, her eyes widened, and for a split second, I thought I saw regret flicker across her face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something more guarded, like she had built walls around herself that I couldn't tear down anymore. "Hey," she said, her voice hesitant. I didn't know what to say. My mouth went dry, and for a moment, I just stood there, taking her in. She looked exactly the same, but I realized in that moment how much she had changed. She wasn't the woman I had once known. She was someone else now, someone I didn't recognize. "How are you?" she asked, her eyes searching mine for something. I don't know what she expected, but I couldn't give her the satisfaction of pretending like everything was okay. "Good," I said, forcing a smile. "How about you?" Her eyes flickered to the shopping cart she was pushing, then back to me. "I'm doing all right. Just getting used to everything, you know?" I nodded, even though I didn't know what she meant. I didn't know if she was talking about her new life with Aaron or the life we had shared that was now over. Either way, it didn't matter. We stood there for a few moments in awkward silence, neither of us knowing what to say next. I could feel the weight of everything between us, the years together, the betrayal, the pain. It all felt like a heavy weight that neither of us could lift. Finally, I broke the silence. "I saw the photo," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Her eyes dropped to the ground, and she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." "No," I said, unable to hide the bitterness creeping into my voice. "You think it would have been better if I hadn't? If I just kept pretending everything was fine while you were already moving on with someone else?" She flinched, and I saw the guilt flash across her face. But she didn't respond. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, the resentment I had been trying to suppress for so long. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her everything I had been holding in. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her. "I don't want this," I finally said, my voice thick. "I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to keep pretending like we can still be friends, like we can fix this. It's over, Marissa. And I think it's time you stop pretending like you didn't know that." The words hung in the air between us, and I could see her fighting back tears, but she didn't let them fall. She nodded slowly, like she understood. But there was no apology, no remorse, just a quiet acceptance of what had happened. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the noise of the store. "I didn't mean to hurt you." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, surrounded by the fruits and vegetables, while I left behind a relationship that had once meant everything to me. The days after that encounter were the hardest I've ever had to face. It was like the last remnants of hope I had left for reconciliation with Marissa had finally vanished. But something inside me shifted after walking away from her in that store. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't bitterness, though there was still a touch of it left deep down. What I felt was something different, freedom. I realized that I had been holding on to the past, clinging to something that was already gone. I had allowed myself to become the version of me she wanted me to be, someone who lived in the shadow of her decisions, waiting for her approval, waiting for her love. But that wasn't me. Not anymore. I started making changes in my life. Small things at first, getting out of the house more, reconnecting with old friends, taking care of myself in ways I had neglected for too long. I signed up for a gym membership, started running every morning, and even took up hobbies I had forgotten about. I didn't need Marissa's validation to be happy. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was enough. I was finally learning to be enough for myself. A few months passed, and I had begun to feel like I was living again. But then, just when I thought I could finally move on completely, the universe threw me one last curveball. I was at a work event one evening. Nothing special, just a casual networking event, but I wasn't expecting to see anyone I knew. But then, there she was. Marissa. She was standing across the room, laughing with a group of people, looking like she had it all together. She was radiant, like she had moved on without a care in the world. For a moment, I felt a sharp sting of recognition. I thought about the past, about everything we had been through. I thought about the betrayal, the lies, and the pain. But instead of feeling like I had been crushed again, something else stirred inside me. It was pride. I wasn't the same man I was when I last saw her. I wasn't the broken, lost soul I had been. I was stronger now. I had grown in ways I couldn't have imagined when I was with her. And as I stood there, watching her smile and laugh, I realized something. She was no longer my future. She was a part of my past, a chapter in a story that I was done writing. I walked over to the bar to grab a drink and was halfway through the crowd when I saw her eyes catch mine. She froze, a flicker of recognition in her expression. I didn't know if it was guilt or surprise, but there was something in her eyes that made me smile. "Hey," she said, walking over to me. "It's been a while." I nodded, feeling no anger, no bitterness. Just calm. "It has." We exchanged a few words, small talk mostly. But then, I saw it, the change in her. The desperation in her voice when she asked, "How have you been?" I could see her searching my face for a hint of vulnerability, hoping for a crack in my armor. But there was nothing. I had moved on. "I'm good," I said simply. "Actually, I'm doing better than good. I've learned a lot about myself in the last few months. I've started living for me, not for someone else." Her face tightened, but I didn't care. I didn't need her approval, her validation, or her apology. What I needed was closure, and I had found it in myself. "Marissa," I added, "I hope you're happy with your choices. I hope they bring you what you're looking for." And with that, I turned and walked away. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't petty. It was just life. I had healed. I had found peace. And that was the best form of karma I could give myself. A few weeks later, I heard some gossip from mutual friends. Marissa and Aaron had broken up. Apparently, their relationship had been full of lies and manipulation from the start. The man she had left me for wasn't the person she had thought he was. In fact, he had a history of cheating, and it came to light that he was seeing someone else the entire time they were together. Karma, I suppose, had its own way of catching up with people. As for me, I was finally at peace. I'd learned the hard way that sometimes the best revenge is not in retribution, but in rebuilding yourself. I was no longer defined by my past or by the person who had left me behind. I had become someone new, someone better. And that, in the end, was the only victory that mattered. The journey wasn't easy, but it was mine, and I was finally free. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.